Welcome to the Kinvestor Report, where we sit down with industry experts to discuss the latest developments in the Canadian small cap sector. I'm your host, Arlen Hansen. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined once again by Fabi Lara, founder of The Next Big Rush, a media channel and free daily newsletter that delivers mining news with an ounce of humor to over 8,000 investors and some of the highest engagement rates in the junior mining industry. She's incredibly well-versed in uranium, and seeing that's what I want for Christmas, I thought I'd sit down and talk to her about what's happened since the last time we had her on the show in earlier on in the year. We dive into the U.S. uranium ban, which is very topical right now. Dive into a bunch of names in the sector that's performed well, not performed well, what we've learned about our investing in this year, and how we're hopefully going to make a ton of money in 2024. So with that being said, welcome Fabi to the show. How are you today?
I am brilliant. I don't know if you can hear my dog in the background. He is usually very excited to be on the show specifically. So there
Oh,
he
bring him
is.
on,
He's
bring him on.
barking. You don't want to see him right now. Trust me.
No, we love the furry animals out there. So next time he's just gonna talk for you, okay?
He might actually be more popular than me, which
Yeah,
it's not difficult.
they always are. Awesome. So yeah, we talked a few months ago about the State of the Union in the European uranium market. Lots happened since then. A bunch of money has been made. Just saw an incredible run in some of these well-known uranium names out there, and I thought it'd be super timely to get back here before the end of the year. Maybe we can do some Christmas shopping for some beaten down uranium stocks that we think have got some
Sure.
value. So we'll drive into that a little bit more. But I guess some of the biggest news here is in the last week is the U.S. approving the U.S. ban on Russian uranium imports. How do you think that's going to affect the North American uranium market?
I think that there might be a bifurcation, and I don't know when this is going to come out, but as we speak, what's happened so far is it's passed the House, it's due to go on the Senate, and then we have already confirmation that Biden's going to sign off on it, no problem, if the Senate does approve it. And it looks like it's pretty much a bipartisan project that, both sides of the aisle are supporting. So it looks as if they're going to approve it. The thing is, there's also some chatter that Russia might actually go ahead and ban exports to the US before they make a decision, which is just wonderful, right? You want to make sure that you're involved in all the craziness politically, and as long as you can make a profit from it, it's all good. The thing is, we don't know whether that is, just like saber rattling, or if they're going to try to use India to export it through India and into the US. But it's a real possibility that we might see that the US will just say, tough luck, we're not going to use any Russian based uranium, and if we need to pay more, we're going to pay more. It was actually a government body, I don't remember the name, but a government body in the US calculated that they would maybe alert, this is the important part, that they would have to pay up to 13% more if they did ban Russian uranium, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with the 13%, they also said, oh, and by the way, we already have, this 6 billion fund to support our, I guess, nuclear facilities in general, and we could use these funds in order to just pay higher prices for uranium. And so for the person who's looking into this, and is thinking of having some exposure to US-based uranium and US-friendly uranium, I think this is a massive opportunity, because they are priming the market for paying higher prices just for
Mm-hmm.
the sake of not going for Russian material. I think that's super exciting.
Okay, so I got some quick follow-up questions on this. So that bill basically states by 2028, right? So there's about a 3-year window here for the US to figure out the supply chain and
Yeah.
supply for American utilities. Now, and they still need to pass the money, right? Because they're fighting over border control money. So
Yeah.
this is still not a done deal.
Yeah.
Um, but that's quite a move by Russia, because if they move that timeline up until or make it immediate, right? Not that that would happen.
Mhm.
where does the US solve their uranium problem?
That's a good question because their capacity is pretty much full,
Yeah.
downstream. And you have a situation where Russia could be just, giving the finger to the US, having figured out that they can't serve the US anyway because they probably have enough of a strong tie to China. And now, there are 24 countries that have just signed at COP28 that they're going to triple nuclear capacity in the next, 30 years or less. And so I think Russia is figuring out, hey, we don't need the US. And since, they're trying to cut us off, we might be able to cut them off before they make it official. And it's interesting because, politics is taking precedence over commerce, which makes it seem kind of scary on the surface. But I think that you might see that, in Asia, maybe uranium is quoted at a certain level, and then in the West, it's quoted at a different level. You might see that because there's actually, a trading warehouse right on the border between Kazakhstan, the largest producer at 40% of world production, and China. And they have uranium going back and forth, and they're trying to, build something going forward that's going to be probably a trading vehicle of sorts. And so, yeah, it might be that we're talking just like oil. We talk about Brent and WTI. We might talk about Western uranium and Eastern uranium, which is strange because it's such a tiny market. You would think that,
Yeah.
like there's nothing to it. But yeah, I think that it's within the realm of possibility. Let's
Oh,
just put it this way.
I totally agree with you. Gwen Preston and I actually discussed that quite in depth when we chatted here earlier in the summer. It was a great conversation. Okay, so just to be clear, when they talk about banning Russian uranium, so that's enriched uranium from Russia. Now they're
Yes.
getting their supply from places like Kazakhstan, I'm sure,
Yeah,
right?
mostly.
Right.
As everybody else.
As everybody else is really. So we're only really talking about not producing uranium from Russia. It's like the enriched uranium from Russia that they're not going to
Yes.
import. Okay. So that's going to
Exactly.
be a huge problem. Who are some of the winners and losers in this scenario? Like I'm talking like specific stock names if we can.
Okay. So I don't know if there are any clear losers because it doesn't, as long as it doesn't exclude Kazakhstan, it would be, I think, a big hit, to Kazatomprom, the uranium-based company
Yeah.
there, if the US were to, widen that to them. I think it would be silly for them to do so because they sort of dance with the flow politically. They're partly pro-Russia when it makes sense. They have strong ties to China, but it's not like they're anti-Western world because they export a lot of material out. So I can't really think of losers, but winners, I think clearly would be any company that is either in the US or in Canada, because I have heard from, the leaders within the Department of Energy in the US that they are pretty much counting on Canada to supply their uranium needs going forward. I think that's a little bit risky since everybody is depending on Canada going forward. And, we talk about next gen coming on and maybe Fission, Denison, all of these great companies with great assets in the Athabasca Basin. I like the prospect, but I like they're not going to be producing anytime soon. So I think that in the US, because you see this political shift, I think people are going to be looking more towards US based complete nuclear cycle from uranium mining, because uranium used to be like the US used to be the number one uranium producer company or producer country in the world, like back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And the uranium is there, the assets are there, they haven't gone anywhere. And it's a matter of making sure that permitting is maybe fast tracked or anything that they can do to speed things up. And I think there's going to be I've been saying this for years now. I think there's going to be a revival of US based uranium mining just because the public opinion is turning towards let's not depend on Russia. Let's not depend on China. We can't trust any of these people. And we don't want to support, their political moves. So clear winners to me is pretty much everybody with assets in the US.
Yeah. And when we when we say assets, we do mean companies with strong resources and the potential to go into production, not just, hey, we're drilling and looking for something. So I do want to be
Yeah.
very clear. Just because you got uranium in your name doesn't mean that you've got assets that are going to
Well,
benefit from this.
initially, and then we also have to remember there's a spectrum to this, right? And depending on where we are in the cycle, it starts with good quality names. And so a couple of names that I can say is, okay, within the US, you have the larger companies, I guess, that are more US focused. UEC, you have your energy on a smaller scale, you have energy fuels as well, and now Encore Energy has just started to produce, which, like, I'm a fairly early investor in in Encore Energy, and even I'm, kind of surprised at how much that they got done throughout this time. And so you have that, and then you have companies that have resources, they're working towards development, like you have Western Uranium, you have Anfield as well, and you have, a few others. And then you have companies that are super early stage, and they have still to define, the kind of resources that they have, and, get everything from historical and updated. But we can't forget that this is all about catching a very, very likely bubble. And
Mhm.
then when we're at the latest stages of the bubble, then anything with uranium in the name absolutely explodes,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so for
We've
now, we're looking at, companies with real resources with a real shot, but
yeah,
eventually it will
yeah.
also, flow over to, we are Uranium Incorporated and things of that
Yeah.
nature.
Yeah. Well, we've seen those cycles before. Like in a good gold market, you can just go, I've got gold, and you're, raising 5 or 10 million bucks, and
It
you don't,
happens. You've seen
it
it.
just happens. It just, that's the stages of a bull and bear market for sure. So outside of Russia, are there any other major geopolitical wild cards out there right now that could like really change the landscape for your uranium supply demand picture?
Believe it or not, I don't see anything. Obviously, like I was close enough to, Niger, and I didn't see the coup
Hmm.
happening, and that happened. So, like, who am I to forecast these things? But I think one thing that people are not taking into consideration right now is the ability of companies in the Athabasca Basin to come to production, both top down and bottom up. What I mean is, if I am a local to the western side of the basin,
Yep.
and these companies are coming out and, saying that they have all these beautiful multi-billion-dollar projects, et cetera, et cetera, I would insist on higher royalties, higher pay, more money, more everything. And it is a sign of the times that we're living in right now, where we bet everything on the government helping us out more, and more welfare and more benefits and more of everything to the locals, which, you could argue for or against it, it doesn't matter. But I think that people are underestimating the length of time that it's going to take to put projects into production because of local, I don't want to say objection, but requirements. Let's put it this way.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Um, so we've seen some notable M&A in the uranium space this
Yes.
year. I guess the biggest one really is this ISO consolidated merger and Athens acquisition earlier this month.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to be driving this M&A activity? Positive indicator for the space moving forward, obviously. And then I want to address the potential of next gen getting taken out specifically. I never thought it could happen when Cameco was trading at $15 a share, which to me,
Yeah.
that's the obvious, that's the obvious person in my opinion. There could be others. The project is so robust. We could
Yes.
see different mining companies want to enter the space. But now that Cameco is trading where it is, they've got a little paper behind them to leverage, some good quality assets. So what's the landscape out there? When are things going to start really getting hot in regards to M&A, in your opinion?
Man, I think it's actually I'm cheering for M&A of all sorts in all sizes for this industry. I think it'll be better for the industry. I think it's more likely for some M&A activity to happen in the US because most deposits are smaller and kind of spread out. And I think
Mhm.
somebody coming in there and just, like putting them together would do very well. Um, I was taken aback by ATHA's existence and them coming out and buying two companies all at once, especially with the premiums that they did, which was super interesting. And with ISO and Consolidated, to me it was kind of a head scratcher because I thought, okay, like how do these two fit together? But we have to remember a lot of the opportunity lies in just having larger companies be more attractive for ETFs, for bigger checks being written, more money coming in, et cetera, et cetera. So I think a lot of that is going to start happening as we mature as an industry because it's still very tiny. Like uranium miners are super tiny. I
There are so few companies to put money
Yes,
money into if
true,
you're a large institution, right? Like
absolutely.
they all got some, minimum market caps.
Yeah,
And
and
is there less than 10 out there with like plus 500
probably,
million,
yeah.
500 million plus market caps?
I think there might be 10 or 12
Yeah,
max
yeah, that's
on a good
crazy.
day because it changes so quickly, but on a good day, yes. But I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that then with the next gen question, okay, so in an ideal world, we would see next gen and fission merge because of their geographical location for many reasons that I won't mention, and you probably know this as well. Unlikely to happen, but this is what should happen in a healthy market. I think the infrastructure gain that fission and next gen would have would be amazing and just really good for the region and good for both projects. I mean, your NPV would look better if your costs were lower on infrastructure just because you have two projects in the same region. I have spoken to somebody who was working for Cameco while the next gen discovery was being made, and they just kind of sat and watched, and they knew what was happening, they knew what they were onto, and they didn't make a bid for it for all these years. And that to me is just a sign that Chemical, at least at the time, was not thinking of going in and doing anything. And then when they did eventually do, more M&A activity, it was buying Westinghouse, which is buying a portion of an electric company. So to me, it signaled away from the mining world and
Mm,
towards downstream. I think chemical has more of a downstream view rather than a mining view because they suffered through, the downturn, and they've seen everything up and down. And so I think that's the impression I get from chemical. But the thing with next gen, it's such a good deposit that it wouldn't surprise me if an oil company came in and bought it. You
mm,
know, if a downstream company in the nuclear cycle came in and bought it. And so I think that for next gen specifically, the buyers could be a little bit more exotic than what we're thinking
mhm.
just within our little world in the mining industry, because I don't think anybody is either valuing it appropriately or is big enough to actually make a move towards next year.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. But going back to the MPV, like that has just got to be one of the most robust projects I've ever seen in my 20 plus year career. It's just phenomenal, right? So
It's going to gush money like you've never
yeah,
seen it. Yeah.
yeah. So what are some of the lessons and takeaways for uranium investors from this past year? What do you think?
Price of the commodity going up does not mean your favorite stock. is going up at the same time.
Isn't that true? That's very, very, very true. Yeah.
So there are two ways to go about it. One is that what is moving in the market is sometimes an indication of where we are in the cycle. The fact that Cameco is doing really well this year, to me, indicates that we're in the, not towards the end, but a little bit more towards the beginning of this big wave of money coming in. And smart money is putting money into the most liquid, largest, best company, which is Cameco, maybe Kazatomprom to a lesser extent, etc. And then the expectation is that, it goes downstream. Another thing is that the market doesn't care about your expectation. Mining is a tough business. And when you buy something right after, some sort of rush and the prices moved up, like the highs that we had in November of 2021, almost exactly 2 years ago, that company is going to have to dilute in order to advance their projects. And the market cap could have grown, but you didn't really gain anything price-wise. And so the market is not going to do you a favor of catching up to your entry price and surpassing it because you didn't buy right. And so you have to look very seriously at what you hold. And then you kind of have to do a little bit of work to say, okay, if these NPVs, if these, financial assumptions were made 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or whatever the timeline is, what do they look like now with inflation and with the new price of uranium? And you might find out that actually this is still a good deal. It's still cheap. I'll stay. Or you might find that, you know what, this is close to fairly valued. And maybe I'm going to go and look for other opportunities. So yeah, like I'm taking a victory lap here within the commodity to say like, it's working. It is really working. And what we thought would happen is actually happening right now. We're sitting at probably what, $86, $87 as we speak. Yeah. And the question is, when is it going to get wild and crazy? I don't know, but it might be coming soon.
Yeah, because they all look like the stocks they do look like they're stalling out a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. And that's okay. Like they're flushing out paper, they're flushing out financing paper, etc.
That's true. That's true as well. A
Right.
lot of companies had to finance at, not exceptional levels. So that's something to consider.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you share some of your biggest winners and losers from this year? Just on a
That is a good question. I can share you a loser for sure.
Yeah. No,
I'm still holding it. But yeah, I'm still holding Global Atomic. Funny enough, I think the day of our interview, I said, don't count, the Niger plays out. I think that was like the ultimate bottom.
Yeah.
And then it's gone up. So if somebody out there, listened to what I said and actually bought it at that bottom, you've made a lot of money.
Oh, it was trading at $1.30, I think, when we had that conversation. So yeah,
exactly.
trading at 265.
I should have listened to my own advice and bought more. So Global Atomic is still a big loss of mine.
Yeah.
But let me see if there are any winners that I could mention. Yeah, one company that did really well this year was Strathmore Plus.
Right. Yeah.
F3 did well, but I think that the real jump was from last year coming into this year. So I don't know how much of it actually falls within this year, but Strathmore was probably, the best play.
Good. And so what are you focusing on in 2024?
Keeping to uranium and trying to understand, when things are about to correct, or maybe when it's time to jump out. As long as we have this super thin situation within the spot market, I'm going to hold, a lot of my uranium positions. And also looking into gold. I really like gold developers right now. Everything to me looks cheap, and it's hard for me to even like pick one because I look at a lot of them and then I'm like, well, this is cheap, that's cheap, that other one is cheap, and I find that right now more so than uranium. But the thing with uranium is that I think we're coming onto a stage where there might be a blow off top, and we might actually land on prices that are still quite high and sustainable,
Mhm.
because the people who are going to come in and bid the price up will have to be utilities that absolutely need the material. There is nothing that can take the place of uranium. They can't put thorium in the reactors. They're
Mhm.
not set up for it. And so I do believe in nuclear and uranium going forward. But we have to, be careful with how high we get in this next run. I do firmly believe we're going to surpass 2021 prices in the equities, and that it's going to get wild, and anything with uranium in the name is going to do super well. It might be that 2024 is actually the year for uranium, because we might be coming to, like that last run up.
Mhm.
But the more we do that, the more I'm asking myself, okay, what's cheap, right?
Yeah.
What's cheap comparatively? And so to me, right now, what's cheap comparatively is gold.
Gold. Yeah, 100%. Totally agree with you. So speaking about this run up in uranium, I have started seeing on the UTwit Twitter community lots of people starting to say, I see 300, I see 400. And that to me is always a warning sign.
Yes.
Right. Not that this is, the Time magazine or,
Mhm.
the big media
Yeah.
channels, but when you start getting that euphoria amongst the retail investment community, makes me very nervous about the actions of the stocks. So
Yes.
yeah, just you don't need to comment on it, but it's just something that I'm starting to see, which makes me very aware, which makes me
Mhm.
start looking about reallocating stocks that have done well. And again, going back to your topic of what is cheap, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
exactly. I completely agree with you, but I'm just going to add something really quickly. I agree, and yet I completely understand why people are calling for those
oh,
prices, because of the current setup that we have. I've been saying this kind of tongue in cheek for a long time, because producers are partly pricing their contracts, their long-term contracts, based on the spot price. It's totally within their interest to make sure that that remains high and it doesn't crash. And
mhm.
so one thing to look at would be to, the Camecos and Kazatomprom of this world, or whatever other producer has that kind of contract set up, that, they could come into this market, which is like the thinnest it has been for, the last, however many years. And to just make sure that, if we do come down, it's still to a really good level where they're still making a lot of money. So, yeah.
Actually, that kind of brings up a question here. What percentage of the uranium trade market is actually settled through contracts, like the spot market? It's got to be tiny.
It it varies a ton year to year.
Okay.
I don't know what this year has been. I have a feeling it's something like 20%.
Okay.
It's not that tiny.
Okay. That's
It
that's
does it
that's
does
that's
make a big
material
difference.
enough. Yeah, that is
Yeah,
material
no,
enough.
it
Okay.
does. And because of these long-term contracts and the way that they're being signed now, they do have some sort of anchor, not all of them, but a decent amount of contracts have some sort of anchor, or, ceilings and floors based on the spot price, because they remember the last cycle and they don't want to miss out on any sort of spike that might happen in the spot market in the short term.
Awesome. Okay, so going back to what's cheap out there, what's in your Christmas basket or your Christmas wish list on some uranium names, whether it's because of tax loss selling or
Mhm.
you think they just haven't been recognized by the market for one reason or the other, or they've had to flush out a bunch of financing stock and it's trading below financing. Do you have any kind of names you'll throw out there?
Yes. So I have to tread carefully, because this is not financial advice. And people have to understand, like, some of these companies, I talk about them so in such a positive manner when I own them and I believe in them, that they become clients of mine. And so, like,
Yeah.
asterisk disclaimer. I do still like the US, like I've been saying for a long time. I am currently looking at possibly adding more Kraken energy, and I'm starting to look at Cake. Cake, I think, is radio fuels. You need to tread carefully with that one, but there are some promotional reasons why I think it might run Hint,
Okay.
hint, nudge,
Is
nudge.
that Colin Kettle? Yeah, Colin Kettle's behind
Yes,
that. Hey? Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. And by the way, they've just bought like all of the largest outlets of marketing within the industry and publications. That means that essentially all of their vehicles, companies, etc., can get like, marketing at zero cost. And
Right.
so I would not bet against Colin right now or his team or
No.
any of the associated companies because they could literally make them explode at will. So that is one thing that I'm looking at. I'm starting to really like Denison because they own a lot of pounds of uranium and they could just sell it into the market. They can do it in an elegant manner that would allow them to lower, their capex by a lot. And so as the price is moving up, I think the big winner here is also Denison Mines. I think that
Mhm.
if people catch on to how much uranium they have sitting, then I think it's going to catch a bid. And yeah, a lot of the other companies that I'm looking at, I'm kind of waiting to see where the market goes.
Mhm.
For example, GoVX to me is just super cheap. GoVX doesn't just have projects in Niger, and it seems like they're moving forward with their Zambia project. And they might actually make a go of it independently of Niger, which to me would be quite surprising. But I really do like the team behind this company, and I do believe that they can make something out of this, craziness that has been happening within Niger. And so, yeah, I'm looking at GoVX as well and watching it, seeing where it goes. So those are some of the names that I'm looking at.
Cool. Well, Fabi, thank you so much for joining me today. It was an honor to talk to you again, and I really hope that you have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you.
And everybody, please check out the Next Big Rush daily newsletter and YouTube channel for mining news with an ounce of humor, more than an ounce of humor. I still love reading your stuff. It always gives me a laugh. And be sure to follow Fabi on social media. And if you enjoyed this interview, be sure to join the Kinvestor Network, subscribe to our channel, comment on our videos below, and share them with like-minded investors. Full disclosure, out of all the stocks that we talked, Kin is compensated, and I do own shares of Kraken Energy. I always like to make full disclosure of that. Lastly, on a very quick side note, we've included a survey in the description of the video, and we'd love to hear your feedback on our guests, on our shows, and anything we can bring to our listeners just to improve our audience or improve our content for you wonderful listeners out there. So Fabi, once again, thank you so much.
No problem.
Have a wonderful year. Let's have a very profitable 2024. And maybe we'll bring you on to start talking about some gold stocks in the new year because you know how much I love that sector.
I absolutely love it too. Thank you so much for having me, Arlen. And by the way, a counter disclaimer, I don't get paid by Kraken. I just like them. So
Oh,
like
hey.
I brought this up on my own accord.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, again, thanks so much. Have a great Christmas season, and we will chat to you in the new year.
Thanks. See you.
Yeah, bye-bye.